And we're live now. Good night, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to my sports YouTube channel, Sig David Sports, when I do sports content, reviews about boxing, basketball, and other sports, and also do interviews with athletes, active and retired, and sports related people. And joining me all the way from Costa Rica, a former world light heavyweight champion, Donny Lalonde, who fought Sugar Ray Leonard and Virgil Hill, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, Donny, welcome to my channel. Welcome to my space. Pleasure and good to have you here. How are you?
Excuse me.
Okay.
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, enjoying life in spite of the craziness in the world today. Yeah, enjoying life here in Costa Rica. Live on a farm, very quiet life.
Okay. So, let's talk a little bit about your beginnings in the sport, about where you grew up, and how did you start with the sport of boxing?
Well, we grew up in pretty poor because my mother left my father when I was 3. She had 4 children, and he didn't participate at all. So we ended up in a housing project, and we went to Catholic school. So on my way to school, I used to have to fight the Protestants because they would go this way and I would go that way. So they would start a lineup and I would have to fight one at a time to get to school. And
Wow.
so it was always late. And my mom one day said, "The school keeps calling saying you're late. Why are you late? I get you off to school. I only lived across the street from the school. I get you off to school on time every day." I said, "Yeah, but I have to fight my way to school." She goes, "What do you mean?" So I told her. So there was a boxing club not too far away, the Astoria Boxing Club in Vancouver. And so she said, "Well, you should go to the boxing club to make the fights shorter." So I went and started going to a boxing club. The first guy I sparred with was one of the bullies who always started the lineup for me to fight. And so after I boxed him, that was the end of the fights on the way to school.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So okay. So they were like there was like a family who used to like go bully you.
Well, like I say, it wasn't really a family. It was just a gang of kids. But, it was the early 70s, 71, 72. Kids fought back then with, no, not any kids, people, generally speaking, fought with like chains and knives and
Oof.
stuff like that. It wasn't like guns. So, but, we were like 11, 12 years old. So we were fighting just with our hands. And I would just have to fight past these guys to get to school. So my mom went, she said, "Okay, he can fight you, but he's going to fight you one at a time. And when somebody wins, then I'm going to stop it and we're going to go to the next guy so he can get to school. But he'll fight every one of you every day." So I would fight until finally, like I said, I went to the boxing gym. And then the main bully guy who would organize it all, he was a boxer and he was at the boxing gym. And the coach said, "You two should box." And we did. And, at 12 years old, you don't have to do much to beat somebody. I beat him by giving him a bleeding nose and banging him up a little bit. And after that, he never bothered me. I never had to fight my way to school anymore.
Oh.
And, I felt really empowered by the boxing I did against him because, we're standing there squared off and he throws a punch and I make a miss and then I hit him. And I thought, this is boxing? Jeez, this is fun. This is easy. I can do this. So I always was a counter puncher, just thinking, okay, I'll just wait. I'll even hold my hands down, try to hit me and make him miss and then hit him. It's kind of common sense to me.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your amateur career. How many amateur fights you had?
I only had 15 amateur fights. I left home at 15 years old. So I wasn't looking to boxing to have a long amateur career. I was trying to make money. So I tried to turn pro before I had an amateur fight. And I was scheduled on a card to turn pro, but there was a really bad main event where the guy didn't get hit and he fell, and so the crowd was booing, going crazy. And the promoter said, "Donny, I got to leave out the back door. They're going to kill me. Your fight's not going to happen. You should have amateur fights anyway." So I ended up having 15 amateur fights, and but I really wasn't focused on amateur boxing. I really didn't care. I just wanted to fight pro. So I had a record of 11-4, and I fought in the Canadian Olympic trials in 1979 for the 1980 Olympics.
Oh,
And I made it to the final, and I lost a decision to a guy named Pat Fennell, who represented Canada 2 or 3 times, I think, in the Olympics over like a 12-year period. He was a very good fighter. And after the fight, he told me, he said, "I could not have come out for the fourth round. That was a very tough fight. You did very well. I suggest you continue." But I wanted to fight pro, so I just turned pro in 1980.
okay. Let's talk now about your pro career, and let's start the night you fought Roddy McDonald for the Canadian Light Heavyweight Championship back in July of 1983. So, how do you remember that fight with McDonald?
Very interesting fight. He was 23-1 when we fought, like 21 knockouts, something like that. He was a very known in Canada as a very powerful puncher. I was a boxer, puncher kind of combination, but I had just had a left hand shoulder surgery. About, you can see the scar here, about 3 months before that fight,
Ooh.
and they put a pin in my shoulder. So I had like my arm. You can see the fight; it's still on tape on YouTube. I had my arm kind of like this. I couldn't do this. I couldn't throw an uppercut. I couldn't throw a straight jab. So it's quite a dangerous fight. People thought for sure I was going to lose. George Chavallo, famous Canadian heavyweight, was the announcer. It was a nationally televised fight. And yeah, him. As a matter of fact, I boxed out of Winnipeg, Canada. Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, Manitoba being the province. And the Manitoba Boxing Commission would not allow the fight to happen in Manitoba. They were literally quoted in the papers as saying, "Donny doesn't qualify to fight for this title. He's going to get killed against Roddy McDonald." And so they wouldn't allow it in that province. So we had to have it in Ontario, which is actually where I was born, so I didn't mind. So we ended up moving it, like, I think 3 weeks before the fight, to Kitchener, Ontario, which is my birthplace. And I fought at a university in Kitchener against Roddy. So the odds were against me substantially as far as boxing people thought. But I outboxed him. He was a very, very hard puncher. He hit me once clean, and half of my head was rattling for about a minute. The other half was calm. I've never had it before or since. But when he hit me with that shot, I thought, no more. He can't hit me anymore. So, I moved around and boxed really well. I was actually a good boxer, very good boxer. But later, as I got in my career, as I became more successful and I was knocking everybody out, I kind of changed my style to where I was hunting people versus allowing them to hunt me and me be counterpunching them. So it's kind of funny. I've always wondered how my career would have finished or been had I just stayed a boxer versus a puncher.
Okay. Now let's move forward and let's go to the night you fought for the world title for the first time back in November of 1987 against Eddie Davis for the vacant WBC World Light Heavyweight Championship. If I'm not mistaken, it was vacant at the time. So how do you remember that? How do you remember that night when you became world champion?
Well, again, I was quite an underdog, being from Canada. Eddie Davis about 20 months previous, had fought Michael Spinks. And Michael was, as we all know, probably one of the greatest light heavyweights ever. And at that time, the greatest probably. Since then, Roy Jones, who knows, there's conversations you can have around a few people. But Eddie had given Michael his toughest fight. As a matter of fact, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was with Michael at a Hall of Fame in I think it was Indiana. And we were talking, and I asked him who his toughest fights were. And he said, well, do you know the Davis brothers? I said, you mean Johnny and Eddie? And he goes, yeah. And he said, well, Johnny was one of the toughest. I never fought him, but he beat Leon in the amateurs in the Olympic trials. And he said, but Eddie, his brother, gave me my toughest fight. I said, oh, did you know that that's who I won the title, who I beat to win the title? And he said, no. And I said, oh, let me show you. So I showed him a video of it, and, I knocked Eddie out in 30 seconds into the second round. And he fought 15 rounds of war with Eddie. Many people thought Eddie won the fight. It was a controversial, I don't know if it was a split majority decision. So somebody thought that Eddie won. So Eddie actually, is that the photo? No, that's trying to see if I have a photo of the fight. Maybe not. But anyway, Eddie was a very strong fighter, a very hard puncher, very awkward. So I had to give him a lot of angles. I couldn't stay in front of him and fight like that. So I gave him a lot of angles, and that's how ultimately I knocked him out, because he didn't see the punches coming. It's the punches you don't see coming that really hurt you. And I hit him from angles that he didn't see the punches coming, and that's how I won the fight by a knockout.
Okay. And how do you feel when you became a world champion for the first time in your career?
Well, of course, I became very, very elated. I had had many, many injuries in my body before winning the world title. 1 year before winning the world title, in the same year I won the world title, at one point I had 6 medical specialists
Oh,
say my career was over from 6 different injuries. And my manager wanted to end my career. He said, you're done. Getting a fight for you in the Ivory Coast of Africa against John Marie Amibi. I think he fought Spinks at one time, light heavyweight contender at the time. And he said, you're getting 150,000. I won't take any money, but you're done. The doctors all say you can't fight anymore. You can't even train. And that was like in February of 87, the year I won the world title. So I had to look for somebody who could heal me with their hands. And a massage therapist I had from Denmark heard of a guy in Denmark who was doing miraculous things with his hands, healing soft and connective tissue injuries. And we brought him from Denmark to New York. And he, with his hands, fixed all my injuries. And like 8 months later, 10 months later, 9 months later, I won the world title. And then before winning the world title, a fight really relevant to before that was against Mustafa Hamsho in Madison Square Gardens in New York. I was number 1 in the world. He was number 2. Michael Spinks gave up the belt to move up to heavyweight. And so we fought each other for a unification fight. And it was a very, very difficult fight. Went the full 12 rounds. Mustafa, I won by a decision. But that fight really kind of prepared me to win the world title.
okay. And sorry, you say you had like 5, 6 different injuries, but what injuries like you were talking about?
Well, if you look at my hand,
Yeah.
I have a really bad fracture right here. It happened in my 5th fight.
Oh,
Because it broke here, in the first round, and I kept using it. The broken bone that should be like this fractured, and by using it, it went like this by the end.
Oof.
And the doctor, instead of doing a surgery and putting a pin in it and straightening it, re-elongating it, left it way down here. I don't know if I can really see that, but it's down here. So that made this knuckle, the protruding knuckle that would take all the weight of the punches.
Oh.
So this in my next fight, a rematch, that was my first loss. I lost the decision, but I think I won the fight. His corner followed him to the ring after the fight, or when he was going back to the corner, threw water in his face. I followed him back to say good fight. His corner threw water in his face and said, "You effing bum, you could have won that fight." They didn't even think they won, but the judges gave it to him. That's a political conversation, doesn't matter. But the bottom line is, you can see how short the knuckle is compared to the rest of the hand, instead of being straight across like that. So this knuckle got very, very damaged from that point on. And this knuckle had what's called a split lining in the joint. So the nerve was not protected. And I would hit, and the nerve pain would go all the way up my arm into my neck, down into my lower back sciatic. Because nerve is unconnected. So it would hurt me more to hit somebody than it hurt them at that point. And I had two surgeries. You can't see it, but there's a scar right here. I had two surgeries to fix it, but every time the lining split again, because you can't just hit hard heads with no protection and it not hurt, or split the lining because it's too powerful, because it couldn't share the weight of the punch. This one knuckle took it all. So the doctor said, "We've done two surgeries. Your hand's like a swollen mess, always in a dire pain. You can't continue boxing like that." My hand was just swollen all the time and really, really painful. So that was one of the injuries. Another one was the left shoulder. It kept tearing out,
Oh.
even after they put the pin in it. So it would separate and it would be hanging. I literally had it fall out, and I would try and adjust it and put it back in during the fight. One fight I had, my left shoulder had fallen out and my right hand had just blown up because the hit got really hard and high on the forehead. I had already fought him once. I went the whole 8 rounds, and he was a really tough guy. And I hit him in the second round. I'd already lost my left arm because the shoulder went out. I hit him with that shot, and I thought it hurt so much. And luckily, I looked up, and his eye was split open. Blood was pumping out as his heart beat.
Oof.
And the referee stopped the fight right then. I was very lucky. So my left shoulder was starting to be a real major problem. I mean, I couldn't do – I had a hard time even training. Like a glove was heavy for my shoulder. So that was another injury the doctor said, "We've done 2 surgeries. There's a pin in it. There's a staple in the muscle." I mean, there's nothing more we can do to hold that thing together. You can't box with that shoulder. I had tennis elbow on both elbows.
Ooh.
So I have to wear a brace on my elbows because I couldn't fully extend them because the pain would be so much. But when you have something holding your arm like there and there, you lose blood flow. So my arms would be tired in like 2 rounds. I couldn't even use them because I had no blood flow. I was cutting off the blood flow from these restrictive things. I was just a mess. I had a bad knee. I couldn't run. I had migraines all the time. I couldn't. I would wake up in the morning of a fight with a migraine and just can't. I literally couldn't move. I'd be lying there and just be like, just breathing hurt. And you couldn't put a promotion around that because if I had a migraine the day of a fight, I couldn't fight. Wow. So I had many, many very extreme injuries. And this guy with his hands fixed all of them.
Oh, wow.
My manager did not believe it, could not believe it, would not believe that this guy could fix me. He said, "Tell him to go home." So the guy just said, "I want to do something very dramatic for you to prove to your manager I can help you." So he needed to get paid a lot of money because he was leaving his practice in Denmark to stay in New York to help me. Excuse me 1 second.
Yes.
It's okay. So he did put his elbow in my lower back, had me kind of bend down in a sort of like child's pose position, and put his elbow at the lower part of my back muscle right beside my spine, and ran his elbow very, very deep all the way along my spine. Really, really painful. And I was like, yelling, pain yelling, until he hit a part of my neck. And I started crying like a baby, like boo hooing.
Wow.
Yeah, like boo, and I started visualizing. As soon as I started crying, he held on that spot. And he held it and held it. And I was in extreme pain, like I kind of went out of body. And I saw an event that happened when I was 12 years old, when my stepfather had his knees on my mother's shoulders. She was unconscious on the floor, and he was still hitting her. So I jumped on his back. He flipped me over and punched me in the face. I went against the wall, slid down the wall bleeding, and that stopped the fight. But I relived that moment very vividly at that moment. And he
Wow.
explained to me the name of his work is psychoneuromyofascial integration. You have a psychological connection to what happened, and it's stored in the injury where you held it in your body. And until you relive or reopen that wound and reprocess it, you hold on to it. And it holds you back in that way. So by doing this and me reliving that and him talking me through it. So tell me, oh, I was 12 years old, blah, blah, blah. And I start explaining the story. But from an adult's perspective outside, I had a psychological adjustment to the experience. I haven't had a migraine since that day.
Wow.
Yeah, that was 50 years ago. Well, 40 years ago, 40 some years ago. Yeah,
Wow.
41 years ago. Haven't had a migraine since.
Wow.
So that was one. That was one. And he fixed the rest of the injuries using that same technique. But very, very deep tissue, hands on manipulation of soft or connective tissue. Like my shoulder, he worked for hours in a sauna to just tear open all the tissue that had all bound up from the surgeries and the pin being in there and the injuries and the body sort of like protecting itself, scar tissue. He had to tear that all back open. And then all of a sudden I could hold my hands properly. And I could, fight without pain and without limitation, with much less pain and much less limitation. So he did that all at my whole body. I mean, every part of my knees. I can run I ran marathons after that from not being able to run.
Wow.
So I was a new man when I fought Eddie Davis. Nobody knew that. They all thought I was still injured because nobody could believe anybody could do that with their hands. And everybody knew in boxing that I had all these injuries. So you can't fix those injuries.
Wow. Injuries in a injuries in your elbow, in a shoulder, a bad knee,
Two
and
bad knees
yeah.
and my
Oof.
neck and my knuckle.
Hands. Wow. And that must have been very hard to deal with all those injuries.
Of course it was, of course, but I was just so focused that nothing was going to stop me. That, like when I couldn't run, I would do stairs. For some reason, I could do stairs. So I would just do lots of stairs. Um, when my right hand was in a cast or something from after a fight, it was all damaged. I would just train with my left shoulder. And my left shoulder had fallen out and it was all swollen and I couldn't use it much. I would work on my right hand. I was just 100% focused on my goal, which was to win the world title, to do something that would catch the attention of a girl that I could fall in love with and marry and be happy, and that I could make money. And so I wanted to be a world champion, meet this girl, and make money. I became a world champion. I met my wife 3 weeks before fighting Ray Leonard, and I thought I made enough money to live forever fighting Ray Leonard. So I was done.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
After winning the world title against Eddie Davis, you defended against Leslie Stewart, another world champion. And then after the Stewart defense, you fought one of the best fighters of that time, Sugar Ray Leonard, for the WBC like heavyweight championship, but also for the WBC for the World Super Middleweight Championship. So there were two titles, two different weight divisions at stake in that night. So how do you remember that fight with Sugar Ray Leonard, and what do you think happened in that fight?
Well, I remember it very well. I looked at the fight as very easy fight, honestly. Not because Ray Leonard wasn't the great Ray Leonard, but back in those days, the boxing saying was welterweight or smaller, after 30 years old, they're old. He was 32. I thought he was old and he couldn't fight for 12 rounds. And I was a puncher and he was just a welterweight. And I thought I've knocked out much bigger guys, much tougher guys than Ray Leonard. I mean, I fought Mustafa Hamsho for 12 rounds in a war. There's no way Ray Leonard can take the kind of punishment these guys couldn't take. So I, in my mind, had no thought that he could win that fight. So going into the fight, I had a strategy. That was to box. He's smaller than me, make him work his way in. When he makes a mistake, hit him with that right hand and knock him out. So it was, to me, simple. Before the fight, I was in my dressing room on the massage table. My manager was out looking to see when the next fight ends, so when Ray's going to get ready to go. And I was in the dressing room with Bob Dylan, who's there with me. And I fell asleep on my massage table. And my manager came in and said, "Donny, wake up. The fight's going to happen. Ray's in the ring." He was already in the ring and I was sleeping. Because the whole training camp, I said, "Dave, he's going to figure out one day I can't fight a light heavyweight, especially a light heavyweight who can punch. So he's going to pull out of this. This fight is not happening." Like, I was that sure I was going to win. So going into the fight, I did prepare very, very, very well, but I always did that anyway because that was just my nature. But so I was well prepared. I'm not saying I wasn't. I didn't, and I took him lightly, but I didn't not prepare because of that. I was well prepared. And if you watch the fight, the first 4 rounds, he literally doesn't touch me. Doesn't matter what oh, look at Ray Leonard, hit him with it. He hit me with nothing in the first 4 rounds. I won every round. I knocked him down. I cut him. I had him hurt. He said later, worse than ever. I knew I was hurting him. It was exactly what I thought would happen. I would just beat him up till I knocked him out. But when he went down in the 4th round, you see the pitch. Oh, where's the pitch? You can't. There he is, down in the 4th round in that picture there behind me.
Yeah.
When I walked to the neutral corner, I thought what went through my mind was I didn't hit him clean. As soon as I hit him clean, next time I hit him, I'll hit him clean, and this fight's over. And I completely changed my boxing strategy, and I started waiting for him, just waiting for him to make a mistake instead of creating that mistake through a movement and leading with my jab, making him think he can counter me to get in. So I had a plan to set him up to catch him coming in, but after he went down, I changed my fighting strategy, and he realized it that I was waiting, and he changed how he was fighting, and he became very effectively aggressive. And I was just a little bit off pace. I was just a little bit less than sharp because I was too relaxed. And he won in the next few rounds. And then I started realizing, wow, he's starting to win this fight. I've got to turn it around. And if you watch the fight again, in the 8th round, near the end of the round, I hurt him real bad. And then in the 9th round, at the beginning, about a minute into it, I threw a left hook, right hand, caught him with both punches. And I threw probably 20, 30 punches and hit him with most of them. And he was really badly hurt. I actually, with my mouth guard on, looked at the referee and said, well, what do you want me to do? Kill this old man? Like, stop the fight. I thought the fight should have been stopped. But, it's different when you're in there. You don't see the whole picture. Looking at it from a TV screen, I understand why it wasn't. But anyway, Ray saw me do that. The ref said break one time. I put my hands kind of down and walked away, very casual. Ray threw a left hook, hit me in the chin. I went down. I got up. I was very fatigued. I got up, and he threw a bunch of punches, and he hit me in the larynx. See that scar? Oh. He crushed my larynx. This half of it isn't there anymore. I only have half a larynx, this half. This half is gone. So with the punch, it crushed my larynx, and my body collapsed. And that's how the fight ended. My fault. Keep your hands up and chin down. I'm not saying he did anything wrong. I was like this, and he hit me in the throat. But that's what I remember about the fight. I remember it very well.
Okay. You fought as a light heavyweight your whole career, and then you have to move down to a division you never fought at before at that time, which was super middleweight. So you fought for, as we mentioned, world for 2 world championships in 2 different weight divisions. Did moving down to 168 affect you in any moment during the fight, after or before the fight?
I mentioned to you that I was weak when he hurt me later in the fight, and that was from losing too much weight.
Oh.
But it wasn't 168 pounds that was the problem. I came into that fight at 163 pounds.
Oh.
Look at the weigh-in. I weigh 167, but I have all my clothes on because I didn't want him to know how skinny I was because I overdid it. I had like an idea that I was a vegetarian at the time, very disciplined with my food, ran too much, too many miles, sparred too much. I sparred 10 rounds every day, sparred way too much. And I just overtrained, and I was weakened, but it wasn't 168 that did it. I was 163. If I fought at 168, if I had come in at weight at 168 and then walked into the ring at 170, I would have been a different person. He would not have survived. But I went in at 163 and left the fight at 156. When I weighed myself the next morning after drinking and eating all night, I weighed 156. So I overdid it. It was my fault, but it wasn't because of 168. I had fought at 171 once before. No, I fought at 168 once before. Just after the Roddy McDonald fight, I fought Carlos Tite on ESPN. And that was at 168. And if I won that fight, I got a world title shot against Chong Pao Park or Murray Sutherland for the super middleweight belt that had just come into the world at that time through the IBF. So back in '84, I could have fought for the super middleweight belt. Super middleweight wasn't my challenge. It was I overtrained, and that was my fault completely.
Okay, and then after the Leonard fight, the Sugar Ray Leonard fight, you were kind of you kept fighting, but after the Leonard fight, you were inactive for 3 years. Then uh, after that, you came after 3 years. You came back in '91, and you fought another like heavyweight that if he was world champion, if I'm not mistaken, it was Bobby Seas. If I'm not
Bobby
mistaken, Bobby Seas. So
Chez, that was for the cruiserweight belt. That was the
okay,
WBA cruiserweight belt. I thought, I had already won the light heavyweight belt. I'd fought for the super middleweight belt. I was just having fun. I love boxing. I missed it. So I went back and I fought. And then I got an opportunity to fight Bobby Chez, who was a very good fighter. If you look at his career, he fought Holyfield at one point and did very well in the fight till it hurt his back. But Bobby Chez is a multiple weight world champion. He was a very, very good fighter. And he beat me in a 12 round decision. But in the very first minute of the fight, our training camp had people watching him, and his training camp had people watching me. So what we saw him doing was practicing catching the right hand and throwing a left hook over top. So my guys said, just don't throw a lazy right hand. When you throw the right hand, bring it back straight. First round, I throw a lazy right hand, bring it down like this. He hits me the left hook. I don't remember any of that fight till the fifth round. It was almost over from the first round. And I'm standing there in the ring, and I look straight ahead, and I hear people, and I'm like, that's Bobby Chez. Oh, there's people here. I'm boxing Bobby Chez. 4 rounds. I didn't even know I was alive. And I did really well in those 4 rounds if you watch the fight. First round, when I get knocked down, from that point on till the fifth round is over, that was my best rounds of the fight. But Bobby outboxed me. He fought a very smart fight. He won the fight, fair and square.
okay, yes, Bobby Seas, world champion in two-weight divisions, and then after that Seas fight, like you were like inactive for 4 years, and then you can fight. Then you can fight. Then in 1998, after 1998, you were inactive for another 4 years, and you retire after fighting Virgil Hill, another light heavyweight champion. So how do you remember that fight with Virgil Hill, and what do you think happened in that night?
I was very, very well prepared. I felt great going in training camp. A week before the fight, in a sparring session, I got hit in the eyeball, and I got a split in my lining of a lens. Still today, if I look left, right, up, or down, I see like a split screen. I see multiple lenses from that injury, and my eye split wide open. It was a week before the fight. But again, I know natural medicine, and I know how to heal cuts. So I healed the cut in the week, but my eye was swollen shut, big cut, and a very bad injury that hurt me all the way down to my sciatic. Same thing. The nerve pain went down because I injured my eyeball.
Oof.
Freddie Roach was my trainer, and he goes, what are we going to do? I said, it's good. It's okay. I just got to not move my head till the fight. I had a week. I'm going to get the swelling down. I'm going to heal the cut. I said, what I'm worried about is why I have this pain that goes all the way down my back. I hurt a nerve in my eye. And he said, well, we should cancel. And I said, no, I'm going to take a shot. Because I already knew I was 43. If I didn't fight Virgil Hill and I had this injury, I would never fight again. If I did fight Virgil Hill and catch him with the right hand, because I was punching really hard, and knock him out, I got Roy Jones Jr. for $5 million, and I needed the money. So I said, I'm going to take a shot. I don't care. I'll take a shot. But then we were in the dressing room before the fight, and he was holding pads, and I kept like not hitting the pad in the middle and missing. And he said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I told you, my eye is injured. When you move the pads, I see like this. I see many pads, so I can't see properly." He goes, "Jesus, what the hell? What are we doing in here?" I said, "We're going to stay close to him and knock him out, you know." So he outboxed me really badly, but I hit him in the seventh round with that punch. And after the fight, we're sitting signing autographs. And he said, "Donny, what the hell happened in the seventh round?" I go, "What do you mean? I think I caught you with a good shot." He goes, "I know. I was out on my feet. All you had to do was touch me. And I was going to go down because I had no way to stand up. I was so out of it. And I kept thinking, why isn't he hitting me? I said, because I couldn't see you." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I told him what happened to my eye. I said, "You were running around, moving around, trying to keep me out of the way. And it was making me see like this, like a whole bunch of you, many different screens of Virgil Hill." I said, "I had no idea where the hell you were after that." He laughed so hard. But anyway, that's what happened in that fight. But, in fairness, he was a great fighter. He beat me, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, I saw that during your career after the Ray Leonard fight, and you had like several periods of inactivity where you were like after the Leonard fight you were inactive for 3 years, as I mentioned. Then after '92, inactive for another 4 years. Then after 1998, inactive for 4 years. Like, I- is there any reason that you were inactive for so many years? You retired, then came back, retired, came back. How can you explain it?
I had no reason to fight, logically for my family, my wife, my kids. Everybody thought I was crazy to box. Back in those days, you got to remember when it was. Back in those days, what fighters did is they would fight to try to make money. And when they made a bunch of money, they would retire and live a healthy, happy life. That was the goal of boxing. Back then, that was the goal. It might still be, but nobody does it. That was in my mind. Win the world title, make the money, meet the wife of your dreams, and live your life healthy. So I always had this fight with people around me. Why are you fighting? Don't fight. You're going to get hurt. Everybody gets hurt that fights too long. And they're right. People do. So I would listen. I would stop fighting. Then I would get the itch again and say, I'm going to fight. People would think I was crazy. I had resistance all around me. And then I would do it. And then, I would lose or I'd get hurt or whatever. And then they would say, "See, we told you, and you're going to get hurt. Stop doing it." So I would stop. I love boxing. That's why I kept doing it. But I wasn't like driven to win like I was before I won the world title. And I had all those injuries and I had to beat Eddie Davis and I had to win the world title. I had to do that for my own self, my own spirit. I was very poor growing up. I had pimples. I was skinny. I didn't have beautiful women all around me. So I had reasons to fight. I needed money. I wanted to have money. I love boxing. I just thought it was so much fun. So I had so much drive before I won the world title. Like I would rather die than not win the world title. That's how driven I was. I didn't care if I had 6 injuries. Give me 6 more. I'm still fighting.
Wow.
But after that, you got millions of dollars in the bank, you got a beautiful, wonderful wife, beautiful children, your mother's healthy, everybody's around, friends, family. I mean, it's not as logical to fight. So it was a kind of like a battle, a mental and a psychological battle, whether or not to fight. So I would fight for fun. That's why I fought Ches for the heavier weight class, just for fun. I was not a cruiserweight. I was 182 pounds going into that fight. He was 200 pounds more than that coming down to 200.
Wow.
But I couldn't. I wanted to do something different. I did light heavyweight. I wanted to fight Virgil Hill because he was an all-time great. And if I won, I got to fight Roy Jones, who was an all-time great. I was 43 years old. I didn't need to be doing that, but I loved it. That's why I kept fighting, and that's why I had breaks. years in between.
Okay. Oh, I forgot to ask this question. Growing up, when you start boxing, if you watch the sport, was there any fighter or boxer that you like to watch growing up?
Yes, of course, there were many. Muhammad Ali was a major inspiration for me. Roberto Duran was a major inspiration for me. And the guy who really kind of actually projected me into boxing 100% for sure was Matthew Saad Muhammad. Miracle Matthew, they called him. So in the
Oh,
70s, he fought all these unbelievable wars. He fought against Marvin Johnson. That's how he won his first title. That fight, I said to my friend I was watching, I said, I am going to win that world title. Not only did I win that world title, WBC world title, light heavyweight, Marvin lost his belt finally to Leslie Stewart in Trinidad in the middle of the incredible heat at an outdoor soccer stadium. And at the same ring, I fought Leslie Stewart after I won the world title from Eddie Davis. My defense, which we didn't touch on, I fought Leslie Stewart because he fought and beat Marvin Johnson. And Marvin was the guy, Marvin and Matthew Saad Muhammad. That war is what made me want to be a fighter. I was like, are you kidding? That looks like the funnest thing in the world to do. Fight to the death. I'm doing that. So that's when I decided to, like, for sure, I'm throwing everything else away and I'm going to be a fighter. So Marvin Johnson was part of the inspiration to make me a fighter. And I ended up beating the guy that beat him in the same ring the guy beat him in the same insane heat, unbelievable humidity, unbelievable heat in the outdoor stadium, the same ring, same stadium. I beat the guy that beat Marvin Johnson. So I had all these things in my mind that I wanted to do from boxing, and I did them all, and more, really. I mean, sure, I would like to have won, not lost certain fights. I'd like to have had more fights. I'd like to have fought more guys. But, all in all, for a really injured guy, I was very lucky that I got to live as much in my dream of boxing as I was.
okay.
Very
So
blessed.
okay. Now that I see that, as we know that you moved to Costa Rica, and do you move to have a better life or the quality life? Why did you move to? How is this idea moving to Costa Rica just came out?
I live in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of nowhere, in my mind, in God's country. That's where I always wanted to live. I said to my mom when I was 14 years old, what are we doing here? So what do you mean? I said, I mean, we're living in the middle of a city. These people are animals. This place is nuts. Why don't we live in nature where where there's natural things, God, like the Garden of Eden? Why don't we live in nature? I said, well, we don't really have the money to do that. We live in a housing project because we have no money. And I just thought, this is nuts. So when I was young, like a teenager, I was coming down, not to Costa Rica at the time. It was Mexico. Spent a lot of time in Mexico. Then decided Dominican Republic. Then after I got married, my wife and I, when we got engaged, we came here for an engagement trip, and I just fell in love with it. And I wanted to move in 1990, when we first came here. And she said, this baby, no, you're not Tarzan, I'm not Jane, and this baby's not growing up in the jungle. We were pregnant. She was pregnant. So I was like, okay, we'll wait a while. It took me 8 years every day saying, we got to go. And by 1998, we came down here and lived here. I just love living in nature. I live in the middle of thousands of acres of land. I don't own them all, but nobody else lives here. And I literally live a mile from the nearest house to the north, more than half a mile to the nearest house on the south. So I live in God's country where I've always wanted to live.
Okay, and now let's go. Now let's go to the state of boxing today. If you watch this, you're watching the sport of boxing. How do you see it?
I'm really sad about how the sport is going, with this MMA guys trying to get in and make it a league, making teams, just this breaking up the structure of the business and structure of the fundamental of the way the sport works. I think fighters, the way they train today, are very subpar compared to how we train. So unfortunately, I think it's diminishing right now. But boxing's out survived a lot of things. Hopefully, it turns around and these guys, it doesn't work out for them, and it carries on back to how it was.
Okay. So Tommy, now that your career is over, now that you're in Costa Rica, have you ever thought about like training fighters, like becoming a trainer?
I have. I've trained fighters. I trained a guy, Dale Brown from Canada, took him out of the Olympics and took him to number 6 in the world or something like that. And then a company came along called Interbox. It's in Montreal, and they gave him a lot of money, a lot more than I could, and kind of had more opportunities for him. So I sold his contract to them. I just wanted to help him, and that was the best sort of thing to do. We all thought. And then I just recently in 2017, I took on a fighter from Libya, the first professional fighter of Libya, I think it was,
Wow.
and took him from just starting. He had one fight before me, before we got together, and I took him to undefeated in the top maybe 15 in the world. He got in his head, these people over in the Middle East got to him and started telling him, no, boxing is going to be run differently. You don't have to pay a manager 33%. You don't have to pay a trainer 10%. We're going to own the sport. Those guys can, they're part of a team. You're going to, they got into his head, and I left. His name is Malik Zinad. He fought Beterbiev. No, he fought Bivol a few years ago. I put the fight together for him. I got back together with him after we split because he called me, begged me to. I did. Flew all the way over to Brussels or something. He fought somewhere over there. And I went over there, left my home, left my life, trained him off and on for about a year, got him to a very big fight to get him to that fight. And then he started talking to me about like, no, I'm not paying, I'm not signing. He had already agreed. I said verbally, let's just do a verbal agreement. We don't need to write it. I trust you. You trust me. And then when the money came and those guys got in his ear, he started talking totally different. And I just left him. I just said, you go ahead. They phoned me from South Middle East, but invited me to train at the Mike Tyson gym and train trainers and train fighters. And I walked around my house and I said, see this? I live in God's country. There's no money in the world you're going to pay me to go live in the Middle East. Period. And that was the end of that.
Okay. Now, is there any fighter that you like to watch today?
I really enjoy watching this young kid, Sebastian Fundura,
Oh,
the Towering Inferno. He's fighting tomorrow night against Keith Thurman.
yeah.
He's one that I really enjoy. I loved watching Tyson Fury. I thought his career was a lot of fun to watch. Crazy guy, I like kind of the crazy guys. So, those are two guys I guess I would say I watch mostly right now. Or he was watching. Fury's not fighting anymore. Oh, he's fighting now again. It's his 5th retirement. He's like me. He quits and he can't stop, so he keeps coming back.
Yes, I know. Uh, so tell me, is there something about the sport of boxing that you're not liking today besides the MMA fighters that went to get into the sport that you mentioned?
Yeah, the business side of it I don't like. I mean, the sport itself, I love it. I mean, it's just two guys trying to do their best and fight their heart outs. I mean, I love that side of it. But like I said, I don't feel the same way about the way they train. They ride bicycles. They get or they ride a stationary bike instead of running. They do weights. They do all these crazy stuff. I mean, I don't think you can replace sparring, lots of skipping rope, lots of running on the road, lots of hitting the heavy bag. They all hit the hand pads. I think they all look so good because the trainer goes, bah, 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 I mean, for me, that doesn't resonate. But whatever, to each their own. As long as they're happy and they're doing well, I don't care. You know.
Ah, okay. Yeah, another question. Of all the opponents that you had in your ring career, which opponent was the best fighter that you ever fought?
Well, Ray Leonard was technically the best fighter I ever fought. The toughest fight I ever had was probably Mustafa Hamsho. And probably Leslie Stewart, who I defended against in Trinidad, and Virgil Hill. They were two exceptionally good fighters. Bobby Trez is a very good fighter. Those guys are all very top, high level fighters. So it's pretty hard to pick one from the other. But, the fact that Ray Leonard overcame somebody much bigger, much more powerful, and awkward and hard to get to. I gave Ray, Ray has said, he's been on record as saying that it was more punishment. He received more punishment fighting me than anybody. But he overcame it. So I give Ray a ton of credit for having won that fight. There was no way he should have won that fight. Yeah. So I would say Ray Leonard was the most talented. But Leslie Stewart, Virgil Hill, what am I thinking of? Probably hit me pretty hard. Eddie Davis was a tough fighter, but he wasn't like most skilled. He was just a really roughhouse fighter. Yeah, so I would say those guys.
Okay. So anyway, we can end it here. So Danny, thank you for being in my channel. Thank you for accepting this space. And well, the best of luck. And it was a pleasure to have you here and
Thank
hear
you.
about your boxing career. And it was great talking to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Good luck with your channel. I hope it becomes a multi-million person subscription. And good luck to you. God bless.
Thank you. By the way, follow me for more sports content and more interviews with athletes and sports-related people, including world champions like Donny Lalonde, who was my guest here tonight. So, bye, Don. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you. Good night.